Wes Goldberg, happy Tuesday as we're recording this. Cold open question for you is just scale 1 to 10, NBA playoffs so far. What's your rating?
Out of an entertainment scale or
Yeah.
out of a physicality scale?
A physicality scale just on Magic Celtics alone, and then you pair in Draymond and Dylan Brooks of it all. We're at like a 25 on the out of 10 on the physicality scale.
I've actually enjoyed the playoffs quite a bit. I think this has been a pretty ruckus first round between Nuggets, Clippers, Rockets, Warriors, even Celtics, Magic. You've had a lot of physicality. Pistons, Knicks certainly in that game too, in that series as well. Lakers, Timberwolves has been really fun just from a storyline perspective. You feel pretty good about the Thunder and the Cavs just moving on, which, by the way, I owe you a drink. Congratulations, Chris, to your Cleveland Cavaliers. That one will be on me next time. But
Tough look, I gotta say. We'll get to the Heat today, but oof, that was tough.
I would say only the Heat and then obviously Damian Lillard's Achilles injury. Those are really the only downers of this entire first round. Otherwise, I think it's been a really good first round.
Yeah, I've loved it. I think this is what parity to me to some degree is. It's like, yes, we have some 3-1 series, but those series have been close. I think aside from the 1-8s, I think these series have all been competitive and jostling, and there's been a lot of unexpected, I think, outcomes in a lot of these things. Um, I think the physicality ramping up is good. I
Mm-hmm.
think it shows like these guys are giving a shit. Like you're never gonna get 30 teams that are actually good in the regular season. That's unrealistic. I think this is what you want when you get parity. It's that yes, are there tiers of teams? Yes, that's the reality of the world. That's the reality of sports. But you get enough teams ever throughout up and down the ladder where all these series are really competitive and really hard. And I think like the next round, it's going to be that case. Even if you just look at what the top two teams that have advanced already, Cleveland and Oklahoma City, are getting in round two. Cavs are going to win that series. I think that's going to be a dogfight for a big chunk of it. Thunder getting the winner of Nuggets Clippers is a huge advantage for the Thunder because you would assume they're going to be well rested. But particularly if it's the Clippers, I am floored by how good I think that series possibly. I'm thrilled by what that series could look like.
Yeah, I think the parity thing is a really interesting point. I'm not sure I thought about this before you were talking though, but like, look, you're always going to have dominant teams and you're always going to have really bad teams. That's the life cycle of team building, right? Like you've got valleys and you've got peaks, but maybe that middle part is just going to be a little bit more competitive now to the point where, hey, this 4-5 series actually pretty interesting. This 3-6 series actually pretty interesting. And you don't have as wide of a gap between those teams as much as you did before.
Even 2-7, I think, in the right circumstance, could break a certain way. I think,
Yeah.
obviously we have an inverse 3-1 right now in the West, and then the East, it's Boston's in control there, but there's been some feistiness in both series, interestingly enough. But we'll talk about all these playoff games, plus some NBA news related to Doug Christie, the Dame situation, and much more on the Just Basketball show today. Let's freaking go. What is up, everyone? Chris Manning and Wes Goldberg here with you on the Just Basketball Show. If you have not already, please subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platform of choice. Hit subscribe and hit that notification bell on YouTube as well. We're here with you twice a week covering all things hoops. And Wes, we are powered by our friends at BetMGM.
That's right. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code JustBasketball. You'll get up to $1,500 in a first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android. Sign up using the code JustBasketball. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use the bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply.
Wes, let's start today with what I think is he's been the star of the first round so far, and that's Anthony Edwards in the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're a couple days removed from their last game, but I think Anthony Edwards has been the guy of the playoffs, and just on a very basic level. It felt like last year you could have said that was his breakout, that was his introduction to the broader audience, to becoming one of the face in the conversation, the face of the league. Beating Durant, going on the run he did, beating Jokic, all that. He might beat LeBron and Luka in like 6 games here. I think the Lakers are probably going to win 5, but he's going to probably, unless something crazy happens, knock off a LeBron and Luka team. A flawed team that had to play its starters the whole second half the other night, telling you some desperation from JJ Redick with his rotation. But Anthony Edwards is spearheading a team that is going to knock off LeBron and Luka, and he is going to get a chance as he goes forward to maybe make the Western Conference Finals again. I mean, you're going to get him versus the Warriors if the leaders in those series go on. I think the Wolves can absolutely win that series. I think they can make another Western Conference Finals, and it's going to be because of Ant, and he's even better than he was last year. I think, to me, if I'm thinking about the biggest overreaction of the first round, I think it's just that Anthony Edwards has gotten even better from a year ago and is even elevating himself more, which I didn't really know was possible, even if this Wolves team has really turned into something that I didn't really think it could.
Yeah, there's no question he's been the MVP of the first round, right? Because of what he's meant for the Timberwolves and just this thing that the Lakers can't figure out. And I had the Lakers favored in this series in part because I just thought that the only way for Minnesota to win games in the series would be to blow out the Lakers. Because at the end of close games, I trusted LeBron and Luka's decision-making with the ball in their hands more than I trusted Anthony Edwards, because Anthony Edwards is a phenomenal player. I think it's fair, though, to criticize, if there's one criticism in his game, the decision-making is sometimes questionable, especially when the ball is in his hands. And I wondered, if Mike Conley, who can get played off the floor in this series and hasn't been that much of a factor in the series overall, if he gets played off the floor at the end of these games, then Anthony Edwards is the point guard. Mm-hmm. And if he's the point guard and he's got to outduel Luka and LeBron as point guards, I advantage Lakers in my mind, right? That has not been the case at all in these playoffs, in this series. Luka's decision-making, I think, has actually been a little questionable overall. LeBron James is starting to show his age a little bit, and it just feels like these are two players in LeBron, who is clearly descending, awesome still, clearly amazing, but descending nonetheless. And then you've got Luka, who's, new to the Lakers, maybe not in the best condition, spends more time complaining to the refs than anything else. And, I think his decision-making has been a little questionable since he's been in a Lakers jersey. Seems to be trying to pick on Rudy Gobert a little bit too much, Naz Reid a little bit too much, playing a little bit more one-on-one. And it's really been Anthony Edwards who has ascended, who has kind of stepped up another level. And he's doing it in real time. He's literally doing it in front of our eyes. And he just has these amazing games. And then when it comes back to the decision-make part of it, Anthony Edwards has 6 turnovers for the entire series.
Unbelievable.
6 turnovers to 23 assists. That's awesome. And he's doing it while shooting 45% overall, 43% from 3. He's competing on the boards. He's competing defensively. The Timberwolves are outscoring the Lakers by 28 points in his minutes on the court, which is second behind only Jaden McDaniels, who's also having an awesome series for Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But I love, and then whatever, those are the numbers. Throw them out, because the Anthony Edwards experience is a visceral one, and when you just watch him just take joy in these competitive games, and he's not out there complaining a ton. He's not out there doing. He loves this. He just loves this part of the sport. He lives to compete. And I just think it's really cool. And it is so fun to watch. And then you zoom out, Chris, and then you think about what this guy is doing. And I talked about this earlier in the week, but this is a guy who said that he didn't want to be the face of the NBA because he didn't want the criticism or the hot takes or any of this stuff. And I don't think it's up to him. I don't think it's up to the media. I don't think it's up to the players who becomes the face of the NBA. It is something that just happens. And I think it's happening to Anthony Edwards. And I think it's happening because this story is insanely simple to follow. Number 1 pick out of college. Goes to a woebegone franchise without any playoff experience, immediately starts having playoff experience, pretty much immediately. Yeah. Gets the the breakout star in Hustle. right? The breakout star in the Netflix docuseries that they put together. Just boundless charisma that it can't be contained. It gets the shoe deal, has the playoff experience, gold medalist for the 2024 Team USA. Like, he's just checking these boxes that are insanely easy to follow. And then that's before we even get into last year's playoffs where he's got the boss battles. He beats Kevin Durant. He beats Nikola Jokic. He goes toe-to-toe with Luka Doncic. And then if you were to follow that up with this in the first round, beating a team with LeBron and Luka on it, it would be viewed, and it wouldn't be fair, but it would be viewed as Anthony Edwards single-handedly beat LeBron, who might be the greatest player we've ever seen, and Luka Doncic, who we had put kind of as the next guy, and Anthony Edwards just stepping over both of them.
Yeah.
And then what if it's Steph Curry and Draymond Green and the Warriors in the next round?
Exactly. And Jimmy Butler.
And Jimmy Butler. And it is this linear kind of video game story arc of just beat the boss battles and win the video game. And that's sort of what he's doing. And I think that's why people are gravitated towards him and his story for a lot of other reasons. But it's so simple to follow that even the casual fan gets it.
Yeah, and I think you pair it with the personality, which is like he is real, right? Like, I don't want to be too cynical about this. And by the way, I should note very quickly, people listening, people watching, Wes's audio, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. This is our workaround today. We're sorry it doesn't sound perfect, but Wes is
on my phone.
He's on his phone. He's still smarter than me, smarter than anyone getting mad about this out there about basketball. It's just me cutting a promo on them.
If you're upset about the sound quality, take it up with Steve Jobs, not me.
Exactly. Blame Steve Jobs. Well, really Tim Cook.
Whoever's in charge. Yeah, Tim Cook, this is your fault.
Steve
Unless
Jobs.
it's great, then, all the credit in the world to Tim Cook.
That's right. We're open for business, Tim.
The realness of Anthony Edwards is where you left off.
Yeah, he is just like unapologetically himself. Now, I will say, to play devil's advocate to this, there are moments. David Aldridge just wrote a really good column, I think, about this at The Athletic that I would recommend people go check out. There are moments where not saying he should be like PR handled and taking away the real, because that's normal, but he needs to like learn and grow up. He is still very young, but there are things that he has said and things that he may or may not have done that are incredibly rough looks and not indicative, I think, of someone the NBA as a $billion business, like necessarily wants on it to some degree. But he is also it is a complicated part of him, in that there is this like immature side and like to him, I would just say frankly, and needs to grow up a little bit. That's just the reality. Every star goes through this. It can go to different levels. Certainly, like, I think in some ways we were like spoiled by LeBron and like that generation of guy, because they even if they had miscues, like it was like he just got vilified for the decision, and that was like easier to explain to some degree than some of this other stuff. Regardless, he is just like this guy who's unapologetically himself in an era where everything feels so manufactured. Like, Anthony Edwards doesn't need his own podcast because he just gives it to you real anyway, and he's not like creating a vision of the real. He's not doing podcast P where he's like projecting a vision of himself onto you. He's just himself whenever he does anything. And like there is something about that, I think, Wes, in this era we're in, where it's Instagram, it is everything, we feel disconnected from people, all of these things where like he is just so strikingly original that it like you can't help but not watch it, right? Like you cannot take your eyes off of him in that way. I think the guys right now that really pop, Jokic, I think, is similarly like this because he's so unique in his own way, in a very different way. But I think the reason we grab onto these guys is because they feel so like original in an era where not a lot does all the time.
So this is the part that I'm trying to figure out is why doesn't somebody like Giannis or Jokic resonate the same way that Anthony Edwards does? And, you hear this all the time, and you know this, Chris, like being around NBA media and specifically people who work for networks, right? Like TNT, ESPN, these kinds of people tend to talk about this a lot. We're in a lot of trouble when LeBron James and Steph Curry retires. We hear this all the time, and it has not gone away. And it's why people keep trying to figure out who's next. Mm-hmm. It's more than just this fun kind of barstool story to talk about. It is very much part of the business. Like it feels like the ratings matter, and it's why Luka Doncic going to the Lakers matters so much. And because Luka to the Lakers, I think that's a really good evidence to push back against the oh, well, they're European, and that's why Americans don't really resonate with these people. I don't think that matters at all. Maybe maybe this is just being in Miami, which is like barely part of America. But let me ask you, like being somewhere like Cleveland,
real America, Wes, is that what you're trying to say? I'm from real.
That's right, God's country. Do you think it matters that Jokic isn't from here or that Giannis isn't from here? Do you think that's the reason why they don't resonate, or
no?
Is there something? I think maybe it's part of it, but I feel like it's overstated.
I think it's overstated. I think it is because these guys like are kind of boring, to be honest with you. Like they put on very boring. Like Giannis's like thing is that he tells like corny dad jokes and like goes to like Chick-fil-A on Instagram Live after winning the title. Okay, Jokic doesn't want to engage in any of this. He just like truly wants it's a joke, but he just wants to like do horse stuff, right? Like the Anthony Edwards is just sort of like unapologetically himself, and we're in this era too, Wes, where like it's harder to learn, I think, about these guys, right? Like, to my knowledge, I mean, the closest I think we can come to this is when the DNVR guys, Adamaras and that crew, like went to Serbia and did like that like were there for a while and did like a documentary or something out of it. That was like the closest we've gotten to like SI sending a Lee Jenkins or a Chris Ballard like overseas to profile like. Because we don't get
part of it.
I think it's part of it. It's not the whole thing. But then I think on top of that, it's like Ant just kind of is himself. Where these other guys are, it's just like you get like a different version of it. Luka like doesn't engage with this, and like also it's just like they also just could be like kind of less boring. Like Luka by all accounts just like loves playing like video games and stuff. It's like these guys like maybe don't have the same like of the culture, for lack of a better way of saying it, like thing that Ant seems to have. He's like tapping into something like wholly that the other guys just can't. Maybe it could just be that it could be unicorn.
My theory on this is that, and my theory is stupidly simple. Jokic and Giannis don't resonate, even though they're the first and third best player in the NBA. I don't know, whatever. Top first and top 4 player in the NBA. They don't resonate because they're big men. And outside of Shaquille O'Neal, there's not really been a big man who's resonated in that way, who's been that star.
In our lifetime, yeah. I mean, I would like to, I can't say what Kareem, I felt like Kareem or like Walton had like a.
Magic was a bigger deal.
I don't dispute Magic was a bigger deal, but Kareem felt like, when you hear people talk about him, it feels like kind of like an American icon kind of thing. That could be overstating it. But you're right about Shaq is the one. And like Yao had his own, remember Yao Ming? Yao Ming had his own thing, but he was a niche, and he was like an embodiment of China and the NBA, and like a very unique
super
thing.
Important, but never to the level of Shaq. No, I just looked up top 5 jersey sales as of the last recording of it. Luka Doncic number 1. Part of that is just the Lakers glow. This was after the Lakers stuff, so that's part of it. But also, he's a guard, right? Like he's not. But he's European. It didn't stop. Steph, LeBron, Tatum, Brunson, all wings, perimeter, scorer players. Those are who sells the shoes. They sell the jerseys and all this stuff. And that's why I think you looked at who's next for guards. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander probably should be that guy. If Anthony Edwards could be this guy in Minnesota, I don't know why Shai couldn't be this guy in Oklahoma City. But then again, Shai kind of actively goes against it, but we'll see what happens. If the Thunder win the championship this year, maybe Shai is actually the next guy. And Anthony Edwards has been sort of distracting us over here. But I think maybe that's the reason why it doesn't resonate. We kind of got off the rails on this whole thing, but
I think
Anthony Edwards is the next young. He's the great young guard in the NBA that we're all kind of looking at. And again, I just think, because of his position, because of the charisma that you were talking about, which is a very good point, and it has to be part of it. It's sort of this undefinable thing that it's star power. Some people have it, some people don't. And the fact that you could go to a casual fan and like, oh, this guy beat Kevin Durant. I know that name. This guy beat Jokic. I know that name. This guy beat LeBron. I know that name. This guy beat Luka. I know that name. If he wins, if the Warriors and Wolves advance and he beats Steph, I know that name. It's just like, oh, well, then this guy must be freaking awesome. And you're like, yeah, he's freaking awesome. Like, it's just 100%. A simple story to tell.
And he's going to beat these guys He's going to maybe have another Western Conference Finals under his belt. It is just like he is also doing the cliche like resume building thing on top of it all. It's not like he's like putting up big numbers and is like Instagram or TikTok's favorite player on a bad team. He's like actually winning. It's like the winning, I think, is part of this as well. Winning at a young age is only elevating. And he's also, I think it helps him that he is perceived to have like a lesser team. You know, like I think like to some degree, it's like the fact that he's doing this again with Julius Randle after no one liked the Julius Randle trade, myself included. And Randle's been, I think, like kind of really good for them in these playoffs to some degree. He's been really, really effective in his own way. And I think giving them something different than Cat would have. The fact that he's doing this, what I think is what is perceived as not like an uber great team, I think helps him. It's like the casual NBA fan is probably like, he's playing Mike Conley still in the NBA. Randall's been bounced around. Like, he has Gobert. Everyone just makes fun of Gobert, and yet that team is doing the thing. Like, they're well on their way to doing the damn thing and being in another position to have a chance to make the finals again, which is astounding. We wouldn't have picked that last year, even if we saw like them improve over the course of the year. Wouldn't have picked it. I didn't pick it this year, but it's right there for them, and that is, I think, a huge part of this too. This doesn't matter as much if he's not having these moments now. It would get lost in the shuffle, and we'd be like, what do they do?
Yep.
Let's get a little depressing. Let's talk about Damian Lillard. This really bummed me out more than anything else. I want to just say that because this feels like the end of Dame as we understand him in any way. I can't imagine he's playing next year at all. This feels like he's done the whole year. He will come back and he turns 35 this summer. He'll be 36, you would think, by the time he's back on an NBA court. He's a guard. He's a smaller guard at that. Already was kind of fading into a different version of his career. I'm sure he will come back. I'm sure he will still have some great moments. It'll be great when he does come back. But he's going to be in a situation where, you can't expect him to live up to that contract by any stretch of imagination anymore. It becomes hard, and that's not his fault. But it's just the reality. And can't trade him. Like, he's got no trade value now. The team he's on might be a completely different zone by the time he comes back. You would kind of think we're heading that way with Giannis. It was found very notable this week when Chris Haynes, who, Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, is like family with Giannis now. Do I have that right? I think they're like cousins by marriage or something.
Is that true? I have no idea.
I think so. I'm gonna double check myself and I'm gonna make sure. But he said this week that he didn't think Giannis would play for one team his whole career. Dame is stuck in purgatory. He had the worst injury you could have for a guard, worst time of the year, coming off of the deep vein thrombosis. This feels like whatever Dame comes back, the era of Dame and like him being a guy that like matters. It's dead. It died when he tore his Achilles.
Yeah. So I think we do need to spend some time on Damian Lillard before we move on to the elephant in the room, so to speak. But this is a bummer of bummers, man. Like, and I'm not a doctor. I don't know if this was related to him coming back from the blood clots when he did, but it kind of feels like it was, at the risk of speculation. But it reminds me a little bit of when Kevin Durant came back in the finals and tore his Achilles. And, afterwards you heard like maybe he probably came back a little too soon. And we just don't know how the human body reacts to stuff like this. And I just can't help but feel like he shouldn't have been out there. But you also give him credit because this is the Damian Lillard story. He's always out there when he shouldn't be out there. He was out there doing it for Portland where he probably should have been on a better team. He signed the extension with the Trailblazers when everybody said, you're not going anywhere. And there's this competitive fire and this loyalty and all these things that Damian Lillard has, defined himself by that are all at play here. He went to Milwaukee when he's been open. He didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be there. He wanted to be in Miami. He didn't want to, and when it became clear that Miami wasn't on the table, he actually asked Portland to rescind his trade request and said, it's fine. I'll just stay here. And at that point, Joe Cronin was like, no, dude, toothpaste is out of the tube. We're trading you. And he ends up in Milwaukee where he didn't want to be. And there's a lot of off the court issues going on in his personal life and all of these things. And he tried to make it work and it didn't work. And it never really meshed with the Milwaukee Bucks. And you can look at the talent and say it should have worked more than it did. But you watch the games and you're like, it's not bad, but they're not contending with the Celtics or the Cavs or the Thunder or any of these other teams, despite their talent. So I don't know. I don't blame Damian Lillard necessarily for it not working in Milwaukee.
No.
I give him a lot of credit for trying to come back and play in this series. It just feels like he came back too soon. And I hope he comes back. I hope he returns. But when we do the career retrospective on Damian Lillard, the way that these Achilles injuries work, unless you're Kevin Durant, you're 7 feet tall and can just shoot over anybody, and it doesn't really matter what you do.
And a little younger. I think the age thing just it doesn't matter. The age
yeah, this was Kobe was this old when he tore his Achilles, and we don't even talk about after Achilles Kobe. You talk about one game, his last game. That's it.
Yeah, that's everything else other than that was like a shell of himself.
Right. So when we do the Damian Lillard career retrospective, none of what will, more likely than not, and I would love to be surprised and proved wrong here. I really would. But chances are none of what happens from here to the point of him retiring will make the first 10 paragraphs of the career retrospective on Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
It feels like even if his career isn't over, the story of Damian Lillard is. And that really sucks for one of the great competitors, a guy who had 2 different walk-off game winners in the playoffs, had some really insane moments, brought Portland to the highest of highs since they've been in the mid-70s. Like, just a crazy, awesome career that you could follow all the way back to Weber State, and it sucks that it played out this way.
It threw to me like even just more shade, more like black clouds over what's going on here, which I think is also what would scare me. If I was a Bucks fan, I'd be like apoplectic right now. I posed this in a group chat, Wes, and I'll ask you the same question. Like, it made me think of like would I prefer to be a Bucks or a Suns fan right now, which is also a reminder of how fast the NBA can change because these teams were in the NBA Finals against each other like not that long ago, but it feels about 10 years ago. At this point, and both teams look entirely different. Nothing stays the same in the NBA, even when you win or get close to winning at all. Like the Bucks caps with their picks all basically going out. Dame, aging roster, it would scare the crap out of me if I was a Bucks fan. And the fact that it's even in consideration with the Suns as like a franchise you'd be rooting for to me is that tells you something scary about like where this is at. The Dame thing just throws another wrench in. You can't even. You made this point last episode, I think. You could talk yourself into just like running it back next year with some tweaks and like hoping that's enough because you have Giannis and Dame is still Dame. You can't even do that now.
No,
you can't. And you don't have the picks to like attach to Dame's salary and go get someone else, even if it's like Bradley Beal or something. You can't do that. You're now officially stuck with what you have with an aging roster and Doc Rivers coaching you and the same GM who got you here, like making the decisions, which still kind of confounds me that John Horst is still running the show here. This felt like literally the death of this era of the Bucks to me, more than we already felt like we might have been going there. And that scares me more than maybe anything else here, if I'm a Bucks fan.
Yeah, so I mean, natural pivot point to where, we kind of have to take this conversation, even though Bucks fans don't want to have it, but what happens with Giannis? And this is a team that feels like it has no more outs, to your point. Like, so what do? Right? Like, you have to trade Giannis. I try to play out every scenario, and the only way you don't trade Giannis is if you just say, we don't care, we're not doing it, and until Giannis requests that trade and demands that trade, we're just not going to do it. And then I think about it that way, and I'm like, feels like Giannis has to demand a trade.
Yeah.
Because he's been out here talking about how he wants to compete for more titles, that he's not happy with just the one that he has. And he's going to be third in the MVP race. He's going to finish third, and he's still good enough to finish first any year if his team's just winning enough. But the one out that Milwaukee had at the end of the season was trade Damian Lillard. You could trade because you're not going to trade Giannis, obviously. You don't want to. You can't trade Kuzma for anything, and you have no draft picks. So the one pivot piece that you had was Damian Lillard. Nobody's trading for Dame coming off of this Achilles tear, making $50 million. Nobody's trading for him. Nobody's going to trade for him. So now you could shop Kuzma. You're not going to get anything for him. Certainly nothing that's going to change, the outlook of your season. You don't have any draft picks to make moves. You've got a bunch of guys who are free agents. Who knows if you're even able to re-sign Brook Lopez? I just don't know where this team goes. So if you're John Horst, fresh with this new contract extension, at least you have a contract extension and you could say, look, we're in this. You could go to ownership and say, I know you don't want to trade Giannis, but it is our only option. You've got to trust me on this. You do it now and you could restock and rebuild. You trade Giannis now, you can get a haul back. You won't be as good as you were with Giannis. I know that. He is a local legend, a franchise icon, perhaps the greatest Buck of all time. I just don't know. And I don't want him to leave Milwaukee. I quite like Giannis in Milwaukee. I just don't know what the option is.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to do there was this clip of Carlos Boozer on ESPN going around where he was like he should get his way to the Lakers, and it's like, okay, sure, would he like to play with LeBron and Luka? I'm sure he would love that. Is that at all realistic? No. Is that they can't offer any kind of actual package, right? You have to think realistically about this, and it's Houston, it's probably Brooklyn, it's Miami. It's there's teams that make a ton of sense would give him a better shot. Okay,
can I stop you though on the Lakers part?
Yeah. LeBron for Luka and LeBron
for Giannis.
LeBron for Giannis. LeBron's taking a buyout then. That's what he's doing.
LeBron has a no trade clause, so it can't happen. Never mind. Keep it moving.
Yeah. If that happened and LeBron had a no trade clause, he's absolutely also just immediately saying, I'm taking a buyout, and he's playing he's taking the minimum time with the Cavs.
There's more minutes for Bronny in Milwaukee. Just saying.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
No, I mean,
look, can I just ask? There's no chance Giannis and the Bucks come back and win the series, right?
No chance.
Okay.
It's done.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, everything since they won the championship has been a failure.
Yeah.
In Milwaukee. And look, I stand by the Damian Lillard trade. I think it was the right trade at the time. I think that there was a lot of moves before and after the Damian Lillard trade that didn't work. I don't think they supplemented the roster with the players that they needed. After making the Damian Lillard trade, I think they had opportunities to pivot and make other moves that would have been better. They didn't do that. There's plenty of blame to go around for how we got here, but you're just here now. So if you do trade Giannis, if you're Milwaukee, what are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody who you could say, this is a co-star we can have with Damian Lillard a year from now when Lillard comes back? Or do you just say, we've got Lillard on our books for a couple more years. It's unfortunate. But outside of that, full-scale rebuild, cap space, draft picks, young players. I don't really know.
I think it has to just be that. And, Dame, we'll see what he's next year in a player option. $63 million player option feels like something you should pick up. But, if same time, I could see him being like, I've made a lot. It's $63 million, so who am I kidding? He's not turning that down.
He's not turning that down.
Yeah. Really bummed for the Bucks. Very sad for their fans. At least you got the title, but this is...
Look, Giannis can leave saying, I got you a title. I don't know. It feels like it is at the point where even Bucks fans, they don't want Giannis to go, but if they are forced to trade Giannis, if he demands a trade even, how could you not understand it?
This is going to be such a... we've been saying this, Wes. This just feels like one of those big NBA 2K off seasons.
This offseason has the potential to be wild. Again,
Booker, KD... Let me listen to names. Booker, KD, Giannis, Ja, Zion. That alone is that's a lot of fucking guys that could be on the move. Trey?
Yeah, and Durant feels like a sure thing.
That's done. That's done. That is we just don't know where he's going yet.
Right, but he is going to get traded. Devin Booker, everybody's keeping their eyes on him. But Kevin Durant, that feels it's done deal. He'll be playing somewhere else next year. Giannis isn't quite there, but man, it feels like he's second on that list of if you had to bet on two stars to be on different teams next year. Number 1 draft pick is Kevin Durant. Number 2 draft pick is Giannis.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Weird place. Let's go to well, it's not to depress you more, but let's spend 5 minutes on the Miami Heat.
Oh, great.
I was gonna read you the full list of stats about that series. I'm just not gonna do it. I just want to ask you this question and get your take on it, because this is what popped into my head when I was watching that game and thinking about them. So they lose the way they did, and then Spo was pretty candid post game, as you were there. He's just like, couldn't compete. We have that like irrational confidence, but we got destroyed, basically.
Right.
Couldn't compete. That tells you how big of a gap this current roster has against the elite of the league. Cavs are elite of the league. Tells you how big of a gap there is. That, from what we know about the Heat, is not acceptable to them. It's 2 years in a row where it hasn't gone their way. It's been tricky, lost Jimmy, all of that. So what is to you, like, what do you think the Heat are going to try to do this summer to mend that gap? Because I cannot imagine they're going to sit back. Don't have their own pick as well, should note, to mend that gap and try to chase the top again. Like, they're going to try. So what is the path?
They're going to look at the names we were just talking about, number 1. So the Heat have 3 tradable first-round picks and $65 million in expiring salary that they're able to move. That sounds pretty good on paper, but when then you compare it to what teams like Houston can give up, what Brooklyn can offer in terms of draft picks and cap relief, there's other teams that can obviously offer plenty if they want to kind of get into the mix on some of these stars. That's when Miami's going to have a problem, is competing with those offers. Do we know that the Rockets are going to make that move? Do we know that Brooklyn is going to make that move, especially if they end up with the number 1 pick and just say, hey, we got Cooper? So Miami is sort of waiting and seeing on what these teams do, but they're going to be phoning these front offices and saying, like, here's our best offer. And in terms of what it is, I think for somebody like Durant, it's the draft picks, it's some salary. I don't think you want to move Bam in any deal. I think you would move Tyler in a Giannis deal if that's what they wanted. I don't know that that's what Milwaukee wants. I don't think that you move Tyler in a deal for Kevin Durant, but now we're sort of getting into the specifics. But to me, the Heat have to go 2 ways. And I said this on Locked On Heat, by the way. That the way you lost to the Cavs would be a fireable offense for any other coaching staff and front office in the league.
Yeah.
For the most part. And I'm not saying that the Heat should or will fire Spo and Pat Riley. That's not happening. We know that. But it is so bad that heads would roll in any other circumstance. And they should, right? And so because you're not going to do that, and again, I don't think they should do that, but because you're not going to do that, something has to change. Like, you can't come back and just say, well, a full training camp with Andrew Wiggins and we'll see what happens. You can't do that. Like, you can't. You've got to change something. Yeah. I also don't think that there's an appetite to wait another 5 years between stars, the way that they waited between LeBron and Jimmy Butler 2014 and 2019. Jimmy's not there. There's an appetite. They want another star. They're going to go after Durant. They're going to call about Giannis. They're going to call about Devin Booker. They'll probably call about Zion and John Morant and everybody else who you could think of. They're going to make calls. Pat Riley is going to turn over every single stone to try to find this guy. And if he can't, because nobody in the league is better at not trading for Kevin Durant than the Miami Heat. They have not traded for him 4 times now. This would be the 4th time, I think. It is really hard to go get these stars. So if the Heat can't do that, then I think you can only do the other thing, which is go backwards and start rebuilding. Because I don't know about you, but I didn't see a whole lot of Heat culture when they got blown out by 55 points in Game 4.
No, it looked
or by
like
40 points in Game 3.
The shell-shocked looks on the bench told maybe more of a story than that. Like the photo of the front office, like Alonzo Mourning and Pat Riley and the rest of them, like just kind of like looking like they just saw like a bomb go off in front of them, told another story. It's like those reactions were so, I think, telling of like they were just like, oh, we don't have it. Like this is
Right.
not Heat culture anymore. It's tough.
Yeah. So yeah, it's either you bring something in that kind of reinvigorates that culture and jolts that culture back to life, or you tear it all down and rebuild that culture, because you can't really do this. Fun fact, though, Chris, there's a lot of debate, at least locally, should the Heat miss the playoffs and keep their draft pick, which was top 14 protected to OKC? Do they miss the playoffs and keep their draft pick this year, or make the playoffs, lose their potential lottery pick this year, but then keep it next year? And a lot of people locally said, keep it this year for two reasons. Number one, we need talent right now. Go get it. Maybe a ping pong ball bounces your way and you end up with a top 4 pick and a top heavy draft. The other reason is if you kept your pick this year, you'd have 4 first-round picks that you could trade in a potential star deal this summer versus 3. But by making the playoffs, they actually opened up the avenue to do the full tear it down rebuild, which, had they missed the playoffs, they would have owed their pick next year to Oklahoma City unprotected. Like, you can't go into a rebuild next year with an unprotected pick dangling out there, because that defeats the whole point of the rebuild.
Right.
Like that, you can't do that. So by making the playoffs, they actually opened up that door to say, hey, if we don't get that star, if we strike out on one of these big names, then at least we have this other door that we can kind of, and we can go down that hallway if we need to. I don't know that they will. I'll believe that the Heat rebuild. And by the way, let's just say what that means. It means trading all of it, right? It means trading Tyler Hero. It means perhaps trading Bam Adebayo. It's trading all of it. So I'll believe that when I see it, because that's just not how the Heat operate. But at least that option is available to them if that's what they decide they want to do.
Would the top? I mean, Giannis, I was thinking top of anyone's board here, but like would Durant or Booker? Like, where would you say the number 2 is? If you couldn't get Giannis, is it?
Yeah.
Is it just Durant and like trying to like get to 4 in the East? Is like that what you go for?
It depends on
if it's you in charge.
I mean, my when I call Phoenix, the first name I'm asking about is not Durant. It's Booker.
It's Booker. It's Bradley Beal,
Booker.
actually.
And it's like, hey, let's just get this out of the way. Not doing that. All right, good. Let's move on to Devin Booker. No, that to me would be the main guy. To me, what this Heat team desperately needs a shot creator. They have shot makers. They have Tyler Hero. Bam's a good play finisher. He's not a good play starter. They just don't have anybody that can create an advantage and make the defense rotate. And they don't have a great passer. I think they are probably the worst team in the league at just running a pick and roll. I'm dead serious.
Yeah, I mean, like the Wizards exist, but I hear you. You know,
the Wizards have Jordan Poole,
who's
a pretty decent pick and roll passer. He's not great.
Yeah, calm down, Wes.
Yeah,
you got.
Marcus Smart for half the year.
Look, this is raw. This is day after.
Yeah, they're right.
Like you just saw this in person.
Okay, fine. It's them or the Wizards are the worst at running pick and roll in the league.
Look, I think just to your point, it's not up to the standard they want. And they have
Correct.
a standard, and it's like they have not come close to that standard the last 2 years.
Yep.
I think even a Durant or something to bridge a gap to maybe then figure out the next thing. I think it's they're worth monitoring, and people like to live in South Beach.
Yeah, I think stars want to come to South Beach still. Stars want to play with Bam still. I think some stars would relish the opportunity to play under Eric Spoelstra. I don't think all of them would. Just because of the body fat standards and the lifestyle stuff.
Is that lessened at all? Like that's been a thing I've like you hear, like the Heat culture isn't quite like as ironclad as militaristic. Is that true in your? Is it still like as rigid as it was?
No, it's not as rigid as it was, and it can't be, right? Just they don't practice as much as they used to in the NBA in general. There's just certain things that once you just get rid of the practice time, there's just literally things you can't control anymore as an organization. So just start there. And then, there's just certain, like the demands on a star player off the court now are such that it's like are so much higher than they've ever been. You talk like if you ever get an NBA star player to give you his itinerary for just an average day in the middle of the season.
Crazy.
It is wild what these guys got to do on a day. It's amazing to me that they make it to the game on time sometimes.
Yeah, even just the rest part of it is like it's crazy. If you just think about like what like the schedules were and all that. Like when I first started like covering the league and talking to guys about this, and you just how much time they like even if they're not super serious or even if it's like an end of the bench guy, what they have allocated to them on a given day is crazy. Mm-hmm. Even if you're the 15th guy on a roster and you're not playing, it's like the rest of your day it's still nuts.
So yeah, I think it's not the same, but I do think there's still something about it.
Yeah.
And there's an idea that, hey, if you're playing in Miami, that they're going to get the best out of you. Yeah. And you're going to compete every single night. Now, after these last two Cavs games, after this playoff series, I don't know that the Heat have they don't have the same amount of legs that they were standing on before when it comes to that. But I do think it's going to take a lot more than one playoff series to break that. But yeah, I think if you're the Heat, that's what you do. You go get one of those names and then you just try to compete. The Heat, like, they need a shot creator. I think that's why I would be asking for Devin Booker, because I actually think he's a okay point guard when you just let him be that.
Yep.
Durant makes sense, but he's not really that playmaker type. We can have the Ja Morant conversation. Let's not pretend that he's an awesome playmaker either. He's he's a flashy passer. He's not a guy who's like masterfully setting the table though. And there's injury concerns with him and all the other stuff. But like Ja Morant will be part of the conversation, I'm sure. Giannis is one of one. They just need a dominant player who can just make stuff happen, and they just don't have that guy.
What's the end on this? Doug Christie going to be the new full-time coach of the Sacramento Kings. Feels like another team that has a lot to figure out this offseason with Scott Perry in there and Sabonis saying they're going to talk about the team's future, all of that and more. Just any thoughts about them going with Doug Christie here as they commit to him, the guy who they put in there as the interim?
The most predictable move ever. This is what the Sacramento Kings do. They like guys who like to be in Sacramento, and Doug Christie liked being the coach of Sacramento. He's been there. He's been part of that organization forever. So, yeah, cool, I guess. I don't know. Like, they weren't going to get a better coach. If there's Kings fans out there being like, they should have done a full search and all these things, what you've got going on in ownership and bringing people back to run the organization, who's really in charge and all that, young coaches have gotten too smart. They know, hey, if I'm that good of a coach, there's a better job coming. Like, the NBA coaching carousel is nuts. Guys are getting fired all the time. So there's not a bright young coach in the right mind to go ahead and take that Sacramento Kings job. So Doug Christie's like, hey, I kind of like it here. I'll probably never coach for another organization again. There's only one organization who've used me as a head coach, and it's this one. So yeah, I'll stick around.
It just feels like a team that's gonna. I feel like they're on my list of do something crazy this summer kind of team. I don't know what it is. I don't know how they do it. It just feels like that's the team. They're so depressing, man. Like I think the Sacramento fans I think they have the best fan base in the league. That team is so those fans are so ride or die. They deserve so much better than this, man. They really do. I have nothing but respect for Kings fans. They deserve way better than this. 2 years,
an absolute disaster.
We were not. It's nuts how fast we have gone from the Kings are back to De'Aaron Fox being on the Spurs and all of this.
Yep.
The NBA goes like this. The NBA is just constantly just churning out. It's bonkers. I've never felt that more than I have right now, and it's stuff like this where the Kings ended up with Doug Christie and Fox being in San Antonio that make me feel that. But we'll see how that goes. Scott Perry, don't say anything. Did you see this, Wes, by the way, that Scott Perry's old comments about Zach LaVine on an ESPN podcast where he's just trying to do... It's like,
he's not a winning player.
Even that, from the Kings standpoint, it's just like there wasn't anyone else you liked that, like, same exact resume, basically, but was like, didn't say something about Zach LaVine you have to then have a meeting about.
Right.
It's like every little thing, you know? I know it doesn't really matter that much, and who knows Zach LaVine's even on the team next year, but Kings gonna Kings. Kings gonna Kings. Well, in there, I'm Chris Manning. That's Wes Goldberg. Back later this week with more Just Basketball. We will be talking Clippers Nuggets. on our next episode. Put that in pen. We have to get to that series. Cannot wait for that to continue. Talk to you then. Have a great week. Talk to you.